everyone. Welcome to Thorough Newspaper Analysis, which is presented to you by LawSeco. So today we will be discussing three articles. The first one is from the Hindu, Master and the Roaster, which talks about who is the master and the roaster in the Indian judicial system, and what are the repercussions or what are the issues that are attached with this topic. Secondly, Calling Off Play, which is from the Indian Express, which talks about the NEP policy, which is the National Education Policy 2020, and how has it put down the provision for playgrounds in the school. And thirdly, Revising Food Security Act, why, how, and implications for center states. Basically, in this, we will learn that what is the Food Security Act and what is the recent proposal made by the Niti Aayog. And fourthly, we have the news in flash, but I guess for today, we don't have a news in flash. So we are back with our CLAT project, which is the Project Maverick. So if you're preparing for CLAT 2021, then definitely have a look at this. You can find the link to this course in the description box below. Also, you can check out our daily CLAT quiz from the Hindu newspaper, which will be streamed live at 9 a.m. on our channel. So if you're also preparing for judicial services or other exams, you can have a look at our other courses as well. So this is the multiple choice question from yesterday's discussion. Amazonia 1 satellite belongs to, your options are India, Brazil, Chile, or Venezuela. This is the descriptive question for the day. What is master of the roaster system in the Indian judiciary? What are the possible issues attached with it? So let's understand firstly that what do we mean by the master and the roaster? Basically, it is called as the master of the roaster system. So the Supreme Court has closed proceedings inquiring into a conspiracy to threaten independence of the judiciary. First, let's understand that what do we mean by the master of the roaster? Basically, in the Indian judiciary, there is a system, as we all know, that for various cases or adjudication of various cases, special benches are made, right? So sometimes we have 3 judges bench, we have 5 judges bench, 7 judges bench as per the requirement of that particular case. And then to that particular bench of that judges, some cases are allocated. Here in our judicial system, it is the Chief Justice who is called as the master of the roaster. Now, please keep in mind, this is an important topic. It can be a question for a prelims exam as well, that who is considered as the master of the roaster. So it is the Chief Justice. So basically, it lies as an exclusive power of the Chief Justice to decide that what would be the bench of the judges, as in who all would comprise of a particular bench of the judges, and which cases would be allotted to this particular bench. Now, due to this exclusive power of the Chief Justice in India, many times it has been seen that the allocation of the cases to particular benches, or even the ingredients, or in a way the participants or the judges who comprise of that particular bench, they are sometimes specifically or purposely they are put in such a bench, or some kinds of cases are particularly given to them. So which ultimately is hampering the independence of judiciary. So let's understand that why basically this is a failed opportunity. So what happened recently, that the Supreme Court has closed the proceedings which were going on inquiring into a conspiracy to threaten the independence of judiciary. Now here this article also talks about that, as we know, there are previous Chief Justice of India who was Mr. Ranjan Gogoi. So right after he retired from that post, he was nominated as the member of Rajya Sabha. So this basically shows that there is some kind of political affiliation or influence that was there on him. So that is why when we talk about the independence of judiciary, so it is not even allowed that the judges after their retirement can practice as the judges or can join any particular kind of institution of such sort, just to make sure that while they are on that particular position, they are not inclined towards any particular person or agency or any opportunity that might be helpful for that judge once he gets retired. And that is why independence of judiciary is made sure with this procedure. But if at all the Chief Justice of India would himself he would be nominated as the member of Rajya Sabha, which definitely is is a political post, you have political powers over there. So definitely there is no separation of the judiciary and the executive as is envisaged under Article 50 of the Indian Constitution. So here it says that it failed to recognize the root of many problems. Now, what are these problems? The singular power of the Chief Justice as the master of the roster. Now, here, as we say, when we have the collegium system, or even when we have the appointment of judges, so it is made sure that there is no concentration of power in particular authority, and thus recommendations at different levels take place, and more number of authorities they participate over there in order to make sure that there is no in a way arbitration or concentration of power in a particular hand. But when we talk about the master of the roster system, which we just learned what it was, the exclusive power of this system lies in the Chief Justice of India. And that is why this gives this power a singular nature, which means that many a times it is seen that it is used in an arbitrary or a wrong manner. But since he is the only one who holds exclusive power in this direction, there is no one to raise a question against this. So this power enabled the Chief Justice of India, Ranjan Gogoi, to institute suo motu proceedings despite being an accused. So he presided over the proceedings over his own case for the sexual harassment. Now, this can be really, like, if we think about it, this is such detrimental to the independence of judiciary and the proper functioning of judiciary, because when we say that one cannot be a judge in his own cause, this is a very famous maxim. So here, the very famous maxim of nemo judex in causa sua. So we have all learned about it in our law schools. So it says that no one is judge in his own cause. That has been completely violated, because as we know that sometime back, the case against Chief Justice of India, who was back then the ex-Chief Justice of India, Ranjan Gogoi, who was still in the position as the Chief Justice of India. So a sexual harassment case has been filed against him. And surprisingly, it was him in the capacity of the CJI that he took the suo motu proceedings. That is, by suo motu we mean on its own cognizance, so by itself. So he took these suo motu proceedings despite being an accused. So basically, he was an accused in this particular case. So he ideally shouldn't have had the right to take the suo motu cognizance of this entire proceeding. But firstly, he did this. And secondly, he himself presided over the proceedings which were against him itself. So, like, can you understand? For example, if I have committed a kind of theft, and if I am the only one who is deciding whether I have committed this theft or not, so how much do you think that a justified decision can come out of this situation? So this was almost the same case. See, we are not saying here that he was actually, he actually did any kind of sexual harassment or something. But obviously, if there are accusations, so there has to be complete judicial proceeding that should take place, which is justified and also equitable in nature. But in this regard, when he himself presided over the proceedings that were running against him itself, definitely impartiality or unbiasedness cannot be expected. Then, with CJI as sole master of the roster, any executive seeking to influence the Supreme Court needs only a plaint CJI. So now what here, it is a pliant CJI. So basically what happens is that it is only one person, being the CJI, who is the sole master of the roster. So if at all, the executive, now it can be any government body, any government official, or anyone, if he wants that particular kind of case should turn in his own favor, then the only person, the only authority he needs to influence is one Chief Justice of India. Now, obviously, this is a very decorated, a coveted, position in the country and the judicial system. But still, if there are more people attached to a particular power, it is really difficult to convince them for doing something that is completely wrong. But if at all, there is only one person, so it becomes comparatively easier to convince or influence that person in your own favor. And that has many a times has been seen that it has been happening in the Indian judiciary. And then B.R. Ambedkar remarks on his remarks on the Chief Justice of India were that after all, the Chief Justice is a man with all the failings, all the sentiments, and all the prejudices. So one thing that we need to know, as Dr. B.R. Ambedkar also pointed out, that whatsoever, in the end, the CJI, he himself is a human being. He himself is a man. And thus, he also has various failings, sentiments, and prejudices attached to him. And thus, if there is only one person who exercises the exclusive powers on master of the roster system, then it can be that it is easier to influence this particular person and misuse his sentiments or prejudices. Now, here are some relevant judgments in this direction. So the first is Ashok Pandey versus Supreme Court of India in 2018. So it was held that the master of the roster is CGI's exclusive power. And the second case is Shanti Bhushan versus Supreme Court of India, which was again in 2018. And it said that it rejected the plea that the master of the roster should be interpreted as the collegium. Now, as the collegium means just like where pluralistic votes or pluralistic recommendations are considered. So it was completely rejected. So even till date, we exercise and follow the exclusive power of CGI over the master of the roster system. So here there is a need for the judicial reforms. Firstly, the first important reform is to bring in the collegium system. Now, the formation of the collegium system in response to Indira Gandhi's punitive transfers to high court judges and superseding of judges to appoint the CGI. Now, one thing that we need to keep here in mind is that this is a bit long story, but I'll give you a glimpse of it. See, when the Keshavanand Bharti judgment came in 1973, we know that this judgment had brought a lot of changes in the constitution that had been actually brought by the Indira Gandhi government in the times of emergency. So what happened was, because as we know that in the times of 1970s, the Congress government led by Indira Gandhi, it was in sweeping majority in the parliament, and thus arbitrary powers were given in the hands of the government, but which thankfully were brought down by the Keshavanand Bharti case. So when finally the CGI of the Supreme Court had to be, or basically the CGI of India, the Chief Justice of India had to be appointed. So the basic convention was that the senior most judge of the Supreme Court had to be, he used to get appointed as the CGI. So that was a convention that was always running through in the Indian judicial system. But in this case, what happened was that the top two, or if I'm not wrong, top three judges, they were the ones who had actually given the Keshavanand Bharti judgment. And thus, the executive was not happy about it. So definitely, the prime minister was not happy. She convinced the president as well. And so instead of those three senior most judges, another judge who was at the junior as compared to them was appointed as the CGI. So this was considered to be as a black spot on the Indian judiciary as well, because the entire convention was broken down. So to bring down that complete system, we had brought the collegium system, which later said that now if the president has to appoint, now when the president appoints the CGI, a complete process of pluralistic recommendation takes place, wherein the other people, as in the other judges, the senior most judges also participate in this particular process. But collegium system failed to keep executive interference at bay from Supreme Court. Now, this also we have to see that it is not that it was the panacea for all the perils and all. Nothing like that, because collegium system also in some directions has failed to keep the executive away from the judicial system due to two reasons. Firstly, Justice Gogoi's case, like post-retirement jobs. So I just talked about it, that soon after he retired from the post of CGI, he was nominated as the member of Rajya Sabha. So we can clearly see political affiliations developing over here. And then the privilege of master of the roster is an unchecked power. So just the two cases that we had discussed in the previous slide, that the exclusive power of the master of the roster also is a big trouble for the collegium system. And finally, the judicial reforms should focus on introducing a cooling off period between retirement and post-retirement appointments. Now, what do we understand by the cooling off period? See, if you want to have something, you're eating something, okay? So that thing is really hot now at this point of time. So it just has been brought down from the gas, or you've just taken it out from the oven or something. So in this direction case, what do we do is that we wait for a while. So we wait for that particular thing or beverage or whatever we are going to eat or drink to wait to just cool down a bit. So that is the cooling off period. Similarly, it says here that once a judge retires from the court, so there should be some period that should be waited for, and then there must be some post-retirement appointments that should take place, if any. And then the power of master of the roster needs to be diversified beyond CGI's exclusive discretion. So that's definitely what we have been discussing. So you can go through this infographic as well. It's really good for you. We have already discussed it, so we'll not get into a lot of detail that what is the collegium system and what was the NJAC, which was brought in 2014, but it was then brought down by the Supreme Court. So you can go through this also. This is an entire process that what the two bodies are, the collegium system and the NJAC, again, the criticism of the system and how the NJAC came about. So you can go through this. NJAC basically was one of the new methods that were proposed, that National Judicial Appointment Commission, to appoint the judges of the courts, but it was finally brought down by the Supreme Court itself. Okay, with this, let's discuss the second article for the day. We'll be taking these two articles in a very short thing because they are not, they do not have that much of content, but they had some important arguments. So we've taken up these articles. The first one is children's right to playgrounds. So basically, the National Education Policy of 2020, which we know it was in a lot of hype due to its, overreaching and amazing ideas that it has brought. But let's see how far we can reach up in the implementation. But yes, the NEP 2020's playground related aspects have been criticized in this article specifically. So basically, it says that the NEP, or the National Education Policy 2020, dismantles or breaks down the legal regime of protected playgrounds. Now, see, when we talk about the overall growth of the personality, when we talk about students or children having a good growth in all aspects, now be it education, be it mental growth, and even physical growth. So in such scenario, the playgrounds, as in the culture of sports, plays a very important role. But the National Education Policy has brought some provisions along with it, which actually bring down the protection which was earlier given to the playgrounds through various acts like the Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act, which is the RTE Act 2009, and also the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child 1989. Basically, the NEP 2020 advocates shifting the education system from an overemphasis to inputs to output. So basically, it says that we should not emphasize a lot into the inputs, as in what we are giving to the system. Rather, we should focus at what outputs are we getting. Now, for outputs, definitely we should focus on the skill development, we should focus on the vocational training, etc. But again, there is an argument in contradiction to this, that it is not just the trainings or the skills or the vocational training, etc., that can help a person to develop his skills. Rather, sports and games that teach us so much about the team spirit and sportsman spirit. It gives us so much of exposure. So these things are also equally important. So it directs a review of the practicalities of playgrounds in urban areas, which aims to ease the school operation by removing the RTE playground requirements. So basically, under the Right to Education Act 2009, it was made it was made compulsory for the schools to have the playground. So it was the schools were required to have the playgrounds. But to this contradiction, the NEP has eased this particular requirement, and thus it is very much possible that now schools would not really focus a lot upon giving that much area of their land to a particular playground. Then it proposes that by 2025, the state governments create school complexes and rationalize schools to encourage sharing resources. So the National Education Policy recognizes the children's play only when it serves teachers in imparting learning. So only when the teachers are convinced that yes, they're exactly particularly learning some particular kind of thing, so only then they might be allowed to play. But otherwise, their right to play also has been brought down. So this also a very intricate balance needs to be developed here by the school authorities. So finally, let's discuss this article which talks about the Food Security Act. So Niti Aayog recently circulated a discussion paper on proposed revision in the National Food Security. So here, one thing that is the most important for us to learn is that what is the National Food Security Act? So basically, it was brought in 2013 and it provides legal right to persons belonging to eligible households. Now, this also, we have a reasonable classification here that it will only give the eligible households the right to receive food grains at subsidized rates. So by subsidized rates, we mean that, for example, if particular thing in the market value costs, for example, let's say rupees 20 per kg. So here, almost 15 rupees or 17 rupees would be paid by the government, and only the rest 2 or 3 rupees or 5 rupees would have to be paid by that particular family or that particular person. So that is something that we call as to be subsidized. So like rice would be available at rupees 3 per kg, wheat at rupees 2 per kg under the targeted public distribution system. And by eligible households, here we mean priority households and the Antyodaya Anna Yojana. Now, as we know that this is a very big scheme of the Indian government, which is called as the Antyodaya Anna Yojana, which further provides at strengthening the public distribution system wherein the food grains are distributed to such eligible households. And then the fixing of price takes place under the Schedule 1 of the Act for 3 years, and after every 3 years, the prices are revised as per keeping in mind the inflation and other market standards. So recently, the Niti Aayog has proposed that the national rural and urban coverage ratio to be reduced from existing 75 to 50 to 60 to 40. So basically, it says that the entire coverage of this scheme should be reduced. So it says that if implemented, then the number of beneficiaries will drop. Now, obviously, if the coverage, if we are reducing, so definitely the people who are benefited by this particular scheme or the act, they will also be reduced. And the implication of this would be that the center will be able to save up to rupees 47,000 crore. So which is a huge amount, but of course we have to balance it out with the entire in the long run, what consequences or what conclusion will we have in hand. And if the ration remains at 75/50, which is the current ratio, then the total beneficiaries will increase from 81.36 crore to 89.52 crore in the coming future. So these statistics are not really important for you all, but it's just the trends that you should remember. And just that what is the National FSA, that is the Food Security Act, is important for us to understand. So you can go through these as well. We also have the One Nation, One Ration Card scheme, which is running under the same act. So under which a person who has a ration card of any particular state will be able to now use it in any other state. So this is a very beneficiary for the migrant workers specifically, so that their ration card will be attached to their Aadhaar cards, and thus it will be like one ration card will be there for the entire nation. So this was all for the day. We hope it was a good session for you. Please do subscribe to our CLAT Prep channel, the link to which is there in the description box, for more updates on the current affairs and other preparation tips. Thank you so much.